Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei was the son of John Wick and got betrayed and joins the badass family movie. Before we start, please go support Guerrero Legends for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. Issei, no longer being useful to the factions, decided to kill him and abandon his body in the human world without knowing that they committed the greatest and most terrible mistake of all their lives, since they provoked the wrath of the most feared assassin family in both the human world and the supernatural world. Prologue, the beginning of everything. This day was going to be a very painful one for many supernatural beings, while for others it was going to be very satisfying, since it was going to be the day in which all the leaders of the factions were going to get rid of Issei, the current Circuiti and former pillar of the factions. Surely you are wondering why this is happening. It is very simple. Issei was nothing more than a simple tool for the facts, a simple toy that can be discarded when it is no longer useful to them. Searches, Issei, the other leaders and I have decided to terminate your services in the supernatural world. He said this to an Issei who had several wounds and saw those he considered friends and family very sad. But he noticed that with the exception of Saji, Sona's entourage, Kunu and Nilika's wanted to help him. Issei, I risked my life more than once and this is how you thank me. Was I just a tool for you? He received no response and instead was only dragged into what appeared to be a torture chamber. They tortured him for a whole month until the time came to end his life. Azazel, we'll take away your pawn pieces and Drake too. At that, a red glove materialized on Issei's arm. Drake, I'm not leaving my partner. He gave his all so you could live in peace, and this is how you thank him? Those words made many think, like Azazel, Michael, Gabriel, Penemu and Yasaka. Rias, he was just a tool. We never loved him. I would never love a being as useless as him. Saying that, he proceeded to extract the pawn pieces that were in his body. But the most surprising thing was that he didn't scream or show any expressions of pain. He only had a lifeless face. Once the ritual of extracting the pieces was finished, they proceeded to take away their sacred gear. But at that moment a wall of ice formed, preventing them from getting any closer to him. Seraphal, Sona, what do you think you're doing? She said in a very angry tone. Sona, we won't let them get close to Huda-san. Saying that, Sona and her entourage left Issei's body, causing most of them to become very upset and the others to just breathe a sigh of relief. On Earth, in a camp, you could see how a magic circle was created, from which Sona emerged with her companions. Sona, does anyone have a phoenix tear? Tsubaki, unfortunately not, President. Sona, damn. In this, the red gauntlet materialized to me. Drake, Sona, please help my partner. He's running out of time. Sona, I already know that, but I have nothing to help with. He could not finish because a noise was heard that seemed to produce an echo. Shoo shoo ha ha shoo shoo ha. That sound would make everyone present feel a huge chill, but for some reason for Issei that noise was very familiar, and from the shadows a large subject appeared, with a mask on and a machete in hand. Everyone was afraid of that being, but Issei opened his eyes completely because he remembered it perfectly. Issei, you bought Jason. That left all of Sona's entourage and Drake frozen, since he didn't even remember seeing that being in Issei's memories. But Jason's concern was noticeable when he saw the brown-haired man's condition. Chapter 1: The Family Reunites. Jason saw his nephew very badly injured and being helped by the Citri clan, and without having to think about it he ran to where they were alarming Sona's entourage, since they thought he was going to attack them, but Issei would calm them down. Issei, don't worry, he's my uncle, he won't hurt you. Jason alone would ignore them and hugged the brunette very tightly, since he missed the brunette a lot and was very worried about him. Issei, calm down Uncle Jason, I'm fine. Jason, shoo shoo ha ha shoo shoo ha. Issei, I miss you too, Uncle. Jason, shoo shoo ha ha. Issei, it was those supernatural beings, he said it with hatred and starting to shed tears. Jason turned to look at Sona's entourage and held his machete, preparing to start a massacre, scaring those present a little. Issei, no uncle, they were the only ones who helped me when everyone turned their backs on me. Jason stared at them, but in that moment some magic circles were created and several angels, fallen ones, demons, yokais and Nordics came out. Demon 1, Miss Sona, your sister ordered me to escort you back to hell. Yokai 1, you better not resist since we are authorized to use force. Fallen 1, please come with us. At that, one of the angels would see Jason, who had Issei in one of his arms while in his other hand he held his machete. Angel, hey, you put that bastard on the ground and leave. Jason ignored him and just gripped his machete tighter and held Issei tighter. Demon 2, so you don't want to listen. Yokai 2, then Mori. He couldn't finish as he received a shot in the head hitting everyone, but Issei and Jason already knew who it was. So coming out of the bushes a man in a gala suit with a machine gun in one of his hands while in the other I have carried a shotgun. John Wick. And behind him appeared a man a little workshop than him, with a white mask, a mechanic's suit and a knife in his hand. Michael Myers. John Wick, well, look what we have here. Michael didn't say anything and just approached Jason and proceeded to pet Issei's head, then John approached and looked at Issei very sadly. Issei, Uncle Michael, Dad? John Wick, sorry I wasn't there to help you son, he said it with great sadness while caressing the brunette's forehead. Everyone present was very shocked as he had said, but they put that aside when they saw several supernatural beings fall, all disemboweled, some full of bullets and others with burns, and of the whole mountain of corpses there were two subjects. The first one was a miner with worn clothes and covered in blood. Harry Warden. The other had a blue shirt, brown pants, a machete in his right hand and a gun in the other. Jason Brody. Harry, it seems that these wretches harmed our nephew, don't you believe it, brother? Jason Brody, that's right, we're going to teach them that nobody messes with family. So the 5 of them went against the remaining soldiers while being watched by Sona's entourage, who were more than petrified to see how bloodthirsty they could be. Drake was more than plotted since during all the time he lived there was never anything like it. Jason killed them by decapitating them, separating them in half with his bare hands. He even ripped out their spines along with their skulls. Michael cut their throats and crushed their heads. Harry killed them with his pickaxe, while Jason Brody and John Wick shot them in critical points. The massacre lasted approximately 30 minutes, no survivors. Harry, that was fun. Jason Brody, that's right. John Wick, stop talking, we have to get Issei to a safe place to try to help him. So the 5 assassins went to Issei so that John Wick could carry them in his arms, and they left the place with Sona's entourage, leaving the place full of blood and guts everywhere. Chapter 2, The Death of a Great Hero. After having put together a massacre with the supernatural beings, our protagonists along with the Citri clan and a dying Issei headed to what looked like an abandoned camp. Tsubaki would see what appeared to be the entrance to the camp and saw the following on a sign. Tsubaki, so this is the Crystal Lake camp. Wick, Jason Voorhees home. We're just visiting. Sona, thank you very much for helping us, Mr. Wick. Jason Brody, tell us why Issei is in this condition. Sona, well, you see. So Sona proceeded to tell them everything about the betrayal that the brown-haired boy suffered and also how they decided to help him by getting him out of there. To say that the family of murderers was more than angry was an understatement, since they had a special code. The family takes care of each other. Harry, those bastards. Issei, hey. Wick, wait, they are. We'll find a way to help you. Issei, it's too late for my father. I just want to tell you that I'm very happy to have seen you once again. Jason Brody, come on kid, you're gonna look good. Harry, we'll take care of yourself. Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers approached Issei and took him on their shoulders. Issei, Dragon. Drag, yes, partner? Issei, I want you to be with my father. Everyone was impressed by the brown-haired boy's request, but the most impressed were John Wick and Drake. Drake, mate, don't say that. Issei, goodbye everyone. Saying that, Issei closed his eyes and stopped breathing. Everyone screamed their hair as they began to cry. John grabbed Issei's lifeless body and carried it near the lake, and then placed it on the ground and began to make a hole in the ground so he could put his son in there. After a while, the place where John was digging was a large mound of earth, but at that moment, in some particles, a silver tombstone would begin to appear. Drake, so you can put it on, buddy, he said it with a brittle voice. John placed the tombstone and saw what was written on it. Here are the remains of Issei. Friend, partner, brother, hero, dragon. The Dracos approached as Wick cried non-stop, and so did the others, even Michael and Jason Voorhees. But then several people appeared, to be more specific, supernatural beings who had blue spheres in their hands. John and the others stood on guard as they thought they were going to attack them, but they saw how they raised their hands to make the spheres they had in their hands begin to float. Jason, Brody, what are you doing? Sona, they are saying goodbye to Issei, she said it while shedding some tears. At that, the Lepeta would shine and shoot a white ray into the sky, and Issei's figure would be present. Issei's soul, I was very happy to know that there were people who were interested in me. He said this while looking at all the supernatural beings who came to see him. Promise me that you will form a better world, Father. John, I promise you are. Issei's soul, I have to go now. Take good care of yourselves. Saying that, Issei's soul went to heaven, taking the form of an eastern dragon. But before disappearing into the sky, he took one last look at all the people who truly loved him and shed a small tear before giving a loud roar and disappearing into the sky, while everyone began to cry for the loss of their great hero/friend/family. Chapter 3: Terror in the Supernatural World. After Issei rested in peace, John Wick proceeded to walk to one of the cabins while drinking a maso. All the supernatural beings who did not betray Issei did not know what he was going to do, but his brothers were already getting an idea. But what they did not know was that they were being watched by two special factions who knew nothing about the betrayal of the brunette. Are, I can't believe those stupid people have betrayed Issei, he said with great anger. Zeus, they have condemned themselves. Anubis, why do you say that, Zeus? Poseidon, let's go with those fools. Then they'll know what we're talking about. So all the Egyptian and Greek gods went to the underworld where the other faction leaders were. While with those mentioned, all the traitors were celebrating. But there were certain people who didn't feel very good about what they did, which were Michael, Azazel, Yasaka, Penemu and Gabriel. Milikas and Kunu decided to go to the little red-haired boy's room without anyone noticing. Everyone was very happy, but then Zeus would appear with his children and brothers, as well as Are. Zeus, wow, looks like they're celebrating something. Odin, that's right, old man, and join us. Are, in fact, we came to talk to you about something very important. Xerxes, and what is it? He asked as he approached Zeus with a drink. Zeus, what is it? Let me remember. Oh, I remember now. Saying that, he landed a big blow on Xerxes' stomach, shocking everyone. But Xerxes' parents, wife, and sister wanted to get involved, but Hercules and his brothers intervened, beating them up. Zeus, you know what you just did, you big idiot. Xerxes, what are you talking about? We haven't done anything wrong. Are would land a powerful blow on his face, deforming it. Are, do you really think we wouldn't notice the betrayal? Ophis, are you talking about that? Please, you knew very well that you were no longer useful to us. Ophis would be sent flying by a blow from Great Red, who had appeared. Big Red, you disappoint me. You all disappoint me. Zeus, they are idiots. He said it to everyone present, but then he looked at the older chestnut trees. Are, and you were supposed to love that child as your son. Gora, that idiot will never be our son. Ika, we just took him in out of pity. That left everyone present more than impressed, even Milikas and Kunu, who were coming down to hear the commotion. Hades, they really made a big mistake. Odin, why? Just for betraying that nobody. Athena, that nobody like you call him. Helios, he was John Wick's son. All who knew that name, like the Egyptian gods, the dragon gods, and Odin, trembled with fear. Scene change. We see John Wick opening a door that led to some stairs leading to the basement. John proceeded to go down the stairs while holding the mallet in his hand. Back with the traitors, Zeus and the others just stared at them with hateful faces. Zeus, John was our partner while ago, they called him Baba Yaga. Scene change again. John was removing what looked like a table and then put the tip of the mallet on it as if to calculate something. With the traders, they were watching what was happening until Ra took the trouble to transmit this throughout the supernatural world. Saji, the bogeyman? Zeus, John wasn't exactly the bogeyman. Hera, he was the one you sent to kill the damn bogeyman. John began to destroy the floor he was on. Serving OH. Zeus, John is a man of focus. Hades, commitment. Poseidon, pure will. Hercules, something you guys are sorely lacking. Big Red, I once saw him kill 2 groups of demons in a bar with a pencil. John would let out a loud scream as he began to pound the ground harder with the mallet. Big Red, a damn pencil. Zeus, one day John told me that he wanted to retire. For a woman, of course, and I agreed. John would give the ground one last blow and begin to remove all the rubble. Hades, without first giving him a special task. Poseidon, a job that no one could have done. Helios, the bodies he buried that day laid the foundation for what we are today. John found himself looking at what looked like an old chest. Zeus, and then my former alliance mates, just days after his wife died, betray and kill his damn son. At that, Rias approaches Zeus. Rias, we can solve it. Zeus, how do you plan to do it? Aquino, finishing what we started. Zeus, no way. Ra, Great Red, do you really think you didn't hear a word I said? Kiba, we can do it. Zeus would grab Kiba by the hair so that he would look into his eyes. Zeus, listen carefully. John and his brothers are coming for you. John would slowly open the chest and become serious when he saw what was inside. Zeus, and you won't do anything. Because you can't do anything against him or his brothers. At that point, Horus would appear while holding the children by his hands. Alright, now we will go talk to him so that he does not attack our facts. Zeus, I would wish them luck, but nobody survives this. Hercules, all of his facts will fall before the wrath of John Wick, the Baba Yaga, and the new bearer of the Red Dragon Emperor. Everyone upon hearing that would feel true terror. The Greek faction, the Egyptian faction, and Great Red faction just disappeared, taking the children and leaving the entire supernatural world to burst into fear and regret. Chapter 4: The Hero, the Anarchist, and the Mastermind. After hearing what the family of assassins were capable of, the entire supernatural world began to create a great uproar due to the great fear they felt after knowing that they were not going to keep that great hatred hidden, but that they were going to hunt them down one by one. Searches, now what are we going to do? Rias, we will face those guys and defeat them like we did with our previous enemies. At that, he would receive a slap from Ophis. Ophis, I should never, ever have supported them in this. But my obsession with power clouded my vision. I made the biggest mistake of my life, and all by joining their stupid decision. Aquino, but it's already late, so it's time to plan something against those inferior beings. Odin, girl, the only ones inferior are us. Searches, but why do you say that if they are nothing more than simple humans? Ophis, those mere humans are capable of destroying a supreme-class dragon each without breaking a sweat, and now that John Wick has Drake, I don't know how dangerous he is anymore. Everyone was shocked by this. They knew they had made a big mistake, but there was no turning back. Now they had to pay the consequences. While with the assassin family, they were talking to the supernatural beings who had not betrayed Issei. Sona, I can't believe he's gone forever, she said, looking at the sky as some tears began to come out of her eyes. Tsubaki, he had to rest already, President. It was that or continue being used by those bastards. Momo, you're right, Madam President. At that point you could hear the bushes moving and what sounded like the growls of an animal. Sona, what is that? She asked with great fear. At that, great roar was heard and the girls ran away while being chased over the trees. Sona, help please, she screamed so they could hear her. That scream was heard by everyone in the camp, but the first to go to their aid was Jason Voorhees, who came across them near the lake. Tsubaki, there's something there. Momo, we don't know what it was, but I think it didn't stop following us. That's where the rest of Sona's entourage, and the other members of the assassin family would arrive without John Wick. Girl 1 President, what happened? Sona, something was following us. Then they saw a man come down from the treetops and walk towards them while growing. Girl 2, but what? The subject stood in front of Jason Voorhees, facing him without flinching. Beast, where is it? Jason just pointed at the tombstone. The beast began to approach the tombstone, and when he was a few centimeters away he began to read what was written on it, getting on his knees while small tears came out of his face. So it was true, said a slightly muffled voice. Everyone began to look around for the owner of that viz until a tall man covered in a green hood emerged from the shadows. Jason B. That's right, David. David, and who was it? He said it with some hatred in his words. Before anyone could speak, another voice was heard. They were those leaders of the factions, along with the other supernatural beings. Saying this, another man wearing a purple jacket came out of a cabin in the camp. Jason B. So you already knew that, Elijah? Elijah, I was informed about it shortly after it happened. Sona, and who was it? Elijah, well, that's Sona Citri, the former heiress of House Citri. You want to know who told me what happened? Sona just agreed. Elijah, it was your sister. Sona, what? But she too. Elijah, no, she also wanted Issei, but she didn't have time to inform me before since they had her very well guarded and she couldn't take risks. That surprised Sona and her entourage a lot. Elijah, she couldn't stand to see Issei being tortured, but she couldn't do anything to help him. Sona just started crying as she thought that her sister was next to those bastards. Elijah, we can avenge Issei, but to do so we must be patient and careful. At that point, a loud bang was heard in one of the cabins. Everyone looked to the place where the sound was heard and could see John in a different outfit. John, it's no problem for me, but I must say right away that the leaders and office are mine. He said this with a voice from beyond the grave. Everyone was scared by that voice, but then a magic circle appeared, drawing everyone's attention. Chapter 5, Declaration of War. All the supernatural beings that had been by Issei's side were a little nervous, as in front of them were the Greek, Egyptian, and G. Rojo leaders as they stared at John Wick and his brothers, while Milikas and Kunu were in front of Issei high at his grave. The little ones were just crying for the loss of their father/brother, while the former entourage Citri tried to calm them down. John, tell me, what do you want? I asked seriously. Zeus, we heard what happened, John, and I'm truly sorry. Jason B. And what makes you think we don't suspect you too? Alright, we didn't know they were planning to do that to young Issei. Harry, and how can we know that they are telling the truth? Elijah, I can answer for them. David, did you know that, Elijah? Elijah, just as I said, Sarah Fall informed me about all of this, but not in time. John, and what do you have to tell us? Elijah, they never knew about Issei's betrayal until after they did it, since they had realized that they would be willing to start a war against the other factions even knowing that they would lose. The assassin family just stared at the Greek, Egyptian, and Great Red leaders as they tried to search for any lies in their eyes, but saw that they were telling the whole truth. John, Zeus, tell me, why are you here? Zeus, I just want to tell you that you and your family are not alone. G. Rojo, there are still people who are willing to fight alongside him in order to honor your son's memory. John and his brothers would turn to look everywhere, seeing how the supernatural beings that were next to their son approached and got on their knees, implying that they would be willing to do anything to avenge their hero. Alright, and tell me what you will do now. John just smiled and proceeded to tell them what was going to happen from now on. Underworld Council of Elders, Senior could see the other leaders, Vala's team, the Gremory clan, Phoenix, Baal, Ophis, the Haida Lords, and the Council of Elders discussing the topic of John Wick and his brothers. Elder 1, so that man is the new bearer of Drake? Xerxes, that's right. Elder 2, and what do you leaders plan to do? Michael, we don't know. Rias, yes, I do, we must face him and sell him out just like we did with our previous enemies. Azazel, it's obvious you didn't pay attention to what Zeus told you. Vala, please, he's just a man. Elder 3, he's not just a man, he was able to kill the original mouse. Old Man 4, he masked them in such a violent way that it was impossible to recognize them. Everyone turned pale upon hearing that, but that's what Seraphal was talking about. Seraphal, but if I eliminated the original mouse, how did Kateria attack us when the first alliance was made? Old Man 5, that's because John let her go. Elder 6, and now you have provoked his wrath by murdering his only son. Yasaka, and now what are we going to do? Old Man 7, come on? Sounds like a pact to me. Ajuka, won't they help us? I asked impacted. Elder 8, you brought this on yourself, so you're going to pay for it. In that they see how a great dimensional gap opens in the sky and from it come many spheres that were headed to different parts of the underworld. Azazel, what is that? Michael, I don't know, but it didn't just appear here, it's also appearing in the sky. Yasaka, and in the kingdom of the Yokais. Azazel, and Gregory. A sphere would then appear in front of them, and the image of John Wick would be projected onto it. Hologram, hello supernatural world, for those who don't know who I am, my name is John Wick, the man in the suit or Baba Yaga and also the father of Issei Hayadu, the man who gave his all for you and who in the end only received a betrayal from you. It seems that you didn't care about all the sacrifices he made for you. Let's start with Rias Gremery, he said, making the aforementioned pay attention. When you were engaged to Razor Phoenix, he did something that no one else would have done for you. He sacrificed a part of his body in order to save you and protect you, even knowing that he would never get that part of his body back, he said, making the redhead start to remember all the good times she spent with the brown-haired boy Akino Hinejima. He made you forget the grudge you had towards your race and your father, and in the end how you thanked him, torturing him with your rays until he was almost dead. Akino and Barakil just bowed their heads. Asia Argento gave you her trust and gave you a family, and you turned your back on her. Kaneko Tujo and Kuroka Tuja. My son made both of you forget their past and reconcile as sisters, but in the end they ended up leaving him alone. The three girls only shed tears. Zenobia Quarta, Irina Shidu, Roswace. My son, I support you when you no longer had anything to hold on to. Plus he was your childhood friend Irina. But it seems that even the purest can be a true demon, he said, destroying the girls, but more Irina, since it was true. Yasaka and Ophis, my son always loved you both like the others. He taught you to move on and leave behind loneliness, but you left him alone and tortured him. Also Yasaka, I have a message from your daughter which says that you should never try to look for her, because she will kill you without any compassion. So everyone realized their mistake, but John's next words made them panic. My son always broke their limits to protect them, and in the end they betrayed him as if he were just a piece of trash. But it is too late for all of you to regret, since from today on, in the name of freedom, we declare war on you. By saying that, Ajuka's laboratory where he created the evil piece exploded, and the same thing happened in heaven where all the Longelus were, to Excalibur's, and the laboratory where the cards were created to turn any race into an angel. It also happened in Grigori where Azazel's laboratory exploded where his sacred gears were. At that, John's hologram disappeared and the sphere began to shine more intensely. Ophis reacted quickly and created a shield, and only a large explosion could be seen, and the same thing happened to the other traitor factions. When the smoke dissipated, a badly wounded Ophis could be seen, but how shocked they were seeing all of hell destroyed as well as heaven, Grigori, and the kingdom of the Yokais. Very few had survived. Elder 3, I hope you are happy. Xerxes. Xerxes, advise I. Old Man 6, do what you want, we don't care. But don't expect us to support you. Rias, Brother Ophis is very badly injured. Xerxes, we'll go get a phoenix tear and come back for 100%. He couldn't finish as he saw the place where Phoenix's tears were starting to catch fire. Valley, this is going from bad to worse. At the fire site, you could see the entire place destroyed with several corpses scattered around, and in the middle of the place were Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers with 4 very large bags. They just disappeared in the flames while they were taking the bags that contained something very important, the tears of Phoenix. Chapter 6, The First Movement. The Freedom Alliance could be seen gathered together planning how their attack against what was left of the factions was going to be. But John just remained distant looking at the lake while he remembered how he had met his wife, the moments he spent with her, and when he saw his son born causing great happiness to be signed within him. Sona had realized that, and decided to keep him company. "Sona, do you mind if I join you?" she asked as she stood beside him. "John, no problem," I answered while still looking at the lake. There was an awkward silence between them until Sona, who was somewhat nervous. "Sona, I'm really sorry for your loss, Mr. Wick." "John, please just tell me, John," he said with a slight smile. Sona had blushed, although she didn't know the reason. John just turned back to the lake while maintaining his smile. "John, I remember the first time I came here with Issei," he said, calling the attention of the brunette. "That day was his 7th birthday. We had a great time that day. We fished right there," he said, pointing to a specific point in the lake. "We spent almost an hour there until Issei caught something. We were making a lot of effort until we finally got it out of the water," he said while keeping his smile. "It was a huge fish. It was the best day I spent with my son before leaving him with the Haidu to be alone," he said, already shedding tears. "I think it was better for him to stay with me instead of leaving me. I couldn't keep the promise I made to my wife before I died. I lost my wife and now my son," he said as he started to cry harder. Seeing this, Sona felt her heart begin to tighten, and as if something was pushing her, she went to hug John. He was quite impressed to see how Sona hugged him and put her head on his chest, but he could notice that she was also crying. "Sona, you're not alone, John," she said as she snuggled further into his chest. "You still have your brothers, your friends, and me," she said, looking at him in her eyes. John, seeing the girl's violet eyes, felt a pleasant warmth begin to invade his heart, a warmth that he thought had faded away. Little by little he was getting closer to Sona's face while she did the same. They were both about to kiss until a certain mastermind interrupted them. "Elijah, John, are you here?" he asked, approaching where they were. Hearing that, they both quickly separated and looked in opposite directions while noticeable blushes appeared on their faces. "Elijah, there you are," he said, approaching John. "John, what's wrong?" "Elijah, we have a little problem." They both headed to one of the cabins where the others were gathered while Sona just looked at John. "Sona, I was about to give him my first kiss," she thought as she touched her lips, and her blush increased. With John, he was sitting while his brothers listened to all the information that the mastermind had about the enemy's plans. "Elijah, well, as Serafal informed me, the factions are tracking us in order to annihilate us." "David, and what about that?" "Elijah, they are already very close to here, and he told me that they sent a total of 30 soldiers from each faction." "Jason B. It seems that they were hurt by the warning we gave them, ha ha ha." "Beast, now what?" "Harry, we can't stay here. If we do, we will put the children, women, and elderly at risk." "David, but where will we take them?" Everyone thought for a bit until John decided to speak. "John, Michael, is the psychiatric hospital you sent him to a while ago a bit far away?" I asked, receiving a statement from the aforementioned. "Elijah, what are you planning to do, John, since I doubt you're planning on taking them there alone?" "John, I'm going to stay and let those supernatural beings know who I am and what I'm capable of," he said while putting on his serious face that reflected revenge and bloodlust. "Drake, I feel like this is going to be fun," he said, materializing on John's arm. "Jason B, you're playing right, John?" I asked equally seriously. "John, you think I'm playing Jason?" "Harry, then we'll stay too." John was going to object, but he saw that everyone's faces showed the determination to make the damned suffer. 30 minutes later, all the allies of freedom were gathered, including Great Red and the Greek and Egyptian faction. "Sona, you must be playing, John," she said nervously. "John, I have to stay to prevent them from following them." "Sona, but..." "John, we'll be fine. When we're done, we'll catch up with them. David knows the way." "Sona, please don't let them hurt you," she said, worried about him surprising her entourage. Saji was not with them. John just gently took her neck and kissed her forehead, making Sona calm down a little. So everyone began to head to the psychiatric hospital where Michael was locked up while the family of murderers stayed to receive their unwanted guests. Chapter 7: Massacre at Crystal Lake. It had been 3 days since the supernatural beings who did not betray Issei left Camp Crystal Lake. During those 3 days they were walking without being able to use their wings or magic circles, since Elijah assumed that if they used some magic they would be located by the facts, and he was not wrong since they discovered what John Wick was capable of. They were attentive to anything that happened. Everyone walked without rest, getting quite tired except Elijah, David, and the beast, who were already used to walking those distances. After a long journey, they finally arrived at their destination. "David, come on, don't give up, we're almost there," he said as he came down a hill. "Tsubasa, and how can you ensure that?" "Elijah, if you keep walking, miss, you'll know," he said, passing by her. After that, they continued walking for about 10 minutes until they managed to see a large house. They immediately assumed that it was the asylum that John Wick had talked about. Everyone looked with great shock except David, Elijah, and the beast, since they never thought that the asylum would be huge. It looked more like a prison. Then Sona approaches the Davids to ask something. "Sona, excuse me, Sentinel, I call the attention of the aforementioned. What is this place?" David, "Well, this place is one of the largest mental hospitals created to treat people with difficult to control syndromes." Elijah, "But secretly they experimented on them in inhumane ways, creating monsters and extremely dark beings that not even your worst nightmares can compare." Tsubaki, "And no, it would be better to go somewhere else," she said with fear while hiding behind Sona. Beast, "Don't worry, the place is abandoned." Momo, "And how do they know?" Elijah, "Well, how do you think Michael escaped when he was locked up here?" he asked with a smile. The girls already assumed what had happened for the place to be abandoned. Without further ado, they all entered the large asylum and began to accommodate themselves as they could. Although it was not a problem since it was very large and also had lower levels, they were able to enter without problems. Everyone. Now Sona, along with Tsubasa, Tsubaki, Momo, and Ruroko, were walking through the corridors of the asylum, but when passing in front of a door they saw Elijah sitting in front of a fireplace while drinking some wine. They were going to keep him company, but before entering they heard how he began to sing what seemed to be a song, to sleep. "Elijah, go to sleep soon or the bogeyman will come for you. Go to sleep soon or the bogeyman will come for you," he sang, and so if it were a coincidence in Crystal Lake the men of the factions began to arrive to inspect the place. Go to sleep soon. From the swamp he will come, he continued singing, while in Crystal Lake the members of the factions began to fall one by one silently without attracting the attention of the others. Go to sleep soon, and he will take the children who behave badly. With John. He was looking at his reflection in a broken mirror while his eyes reflected anger, pain, and revenge. Then he took his gun that was next to a necklace that belonged to his wife and a bracelet that belonged to his son. He began to walk out of the cabin stealthily. With Elijah, he took a last sip of his wine while being watched by the girls, who had an incredulous look at what he had just sung. But Sona felt that he was referring to John, and she was not wrong. Elijah put on a smile after finishing his drink. "Elijah, the bogeyman," he said while maintaining his smile. With John, he had emerged from the shadows, scaring the fallen in front of him. Without giving them time to attack, Wick shot one in the head, grabbed the hand of the other who had planned to attack him with a spear of light, and shot the third in the leg, but then killed the one he had held and then put a bullet in the heart of the one who had shot him in the leg. He saw another approaching in the distance, and with great precision shot him in the head, killing him. John began to move very stealthily to avoid being seen by the members of the factions, who suffered casualties everywhere as they were brutally and silently murdered by the others, giving them honor to their names. But the one who had the most fun was John. "John, hey Drake, are you there?" he asked while changing a cartridge of bullets. "Drake, here I am, partner," he said, materializing in John's left hand. "What's going on?" "John, how about you transfer some of your power to my bullets?" I asked with a smile. "Drake, or yes," he said with a malicious tone in his voice. Drake transferred some of his power to John's bullets that were beginning to emanate a green aura. Then he saw a group of demons, angels, and yokais near some gas tanks. "John, what a coincidence," he said while aiming at the tanks, and with a few shots they exploded, causing green flames to cover them, causing them to die slowly and painfully. John felt someone approaching from behind, so he turned quickly, avoiding a stab, and seeing his attacker, who was none other than Yudokiba, who was wielding his sacred demonic sword. "John, so you're one of those morons who called themselves my son's best friends," he said angrily while pointing his gun at him. "Kiba, I'm friends with that jerk, please don't make me laugh." John, more than angry, hit the blonde's sword and then hit him in the face, grabbed him by the arm and then threw him against a tree, kneed him in the lower ribs, then grabbed him by the nape of the neck and turned him around and threw him to the ground. But then he saw a Nordic approaching at high speed but only managed to kill him with a shot from John. John was going to kill Kiba, but then he felt his body paralyzed. With some difficulty he turned to the side, seeing Gasper, who had his eyes glowing yellow. "Kiba, well done Gasper," he said with a smile. "Gasper, hurry up and kill him. I won't last long." Kiba just looked arrogantly at John and was going to proceed to decapitate the aforementioned, but then a machete intervened and then made him back off. Kiba was going to attack, but then he saw that it was Jason Voorhees. He began to attack the blonde, making him block his attacks with great difficulty, while John raised his gun trying to aim at the vampire. He still put in his effort to keep him paralyzed, but John's strength won out and shot him in the head. "John, one less," he said, and then looked at the blonde, who continued blocking Jason Voorhees' attacks. Kiba continued to block Jason's attacks, although he was cut by some of the attacks Jason managed to give. "John, Jason," he shouted, drawing the attention of the two, "leave this idiot alone." Jason just stood aside as John stood in front of Kiba. The latter tried to attack him with his sword, but John blocked it with his arm and hit him in the shoulder before carrying him and throwing him to the ground. Kiba quickly got up and tried to slash John's face, but he moved and was then grabbed by the neck and tried to stab him with his sword. But John let himself fall, causing Kiba to fall next to him. He got on top of him, while trying to run him through with his own sword. "John, you killed my son," he said, hitting the handle of his sword, causing it to pierce the blonde's chest a little. "Now I will take your lives." Saying that, he gave two last blows, finishing piercing the blonde's heart with his sword. There was a deathly silence as John looked up at the sky as he stood. "John, I guess that's how things are going to be from now on," he said as he looked at Kiba's lifeless body, and Jason walked over to stand next to him. Chapter 8: Return to the Asylum. It's been 3 days since Sona and her friends learned something about the Crystal Lake camp. Now the brunette could be seen walking through the halls of the asylum, somewhat nervous since she wanted to know how John Wick was doing, but then Tsubaki would appear with a small bucket of water. "Sona, Tsubaki, where are you going with that bucket of water?" "Tsubaki, hello Kaicho, well Mr. Glass asked me to help out a little around the place." "Sona, I see, and where are the others?" "Tsubaki, well, the girls are trying to prepare something to eat for all of us who live here." "Sona, I see." "Tsubaki, well Kaicho leaves her to continue with what he was doing." After saying that, he proceeded to leave the place, leaving Sona alone, who began to walk around the entire hospital, seeing all the rooms, all the wards and the secret underground laboratories of the hospital. Many hours passed and everyone had already gone to sleep except the superhumans, who were in a room drinking some whiskey while looking at the fireplace that was on. "David, it took them a while, don't you think?" he said while taking off his hood. "Mr. Glass, leave them alone, they must have been playing with them," he said, taking a sip of whiskey. "Remember that those useless leaders sent many of their people to them. They must have had some fun with them." Dennis Kevin/Beast, he's right, you don't have to worry, David. Remember that there are very few who can stand up to our great power, and those supernatural beings are not part of those few. They were talking quietly without knowing that they had been heard by a certain Citri who couldn't sleep. She was feeling very worried for some reason. She began to walk away from that room very quietly and slowly until she reached a hallway that had windows showing the main gate. She was watching how the moon was coming out of her hiding place among the hills while she thought about a certain black-haired man. But in that she saw how something was moving between the trees. She thought for a moment that it was an animal, but that thought went away when she saw that they were people. "Sona, could it be the alliance of the factions?" she asked seriously while looking closely at that area of the forest. Those figures walked between the trees towards the gate. Sona was ready to tell this to Mr. Glass, but the moment those people left the forest area, Sona could see that it was John Wick and his brothers, who were visibly injured, but they did not care. Sona proceeded to tell that to Mr. Glass and then left towards the main entrance. "Mr. Glass, it seems like they had a lot of fun," he said, leaving the asylum with David and Patricia Kevin/Beast. "David, I imagine there must have been a lot of them to deal with." "John, 2 waves of those bastards." "Patricia, oh how terrible, But how about you tell us about it inside with a sweet tea and a delicious sandwich? Jason B. I'll take the sandwich from you, he said, seeming tired, but then he and Harry were sent flying by Sona, who quickly passed between them to be face to face with John. Mr. Glass, she was worried about you this whole time, John. David, even though I don't have to be. Sona, well? John, relax, I've survived worse things, he said while looking into her eyes, making her do the same. Harry, well, how about we go inside, since I'm very hungry, he said while holding his stomach. 30 minutes later, you could see everyone gone in a big year while they were eating, although John Wick was just drinking some whiskey while Sona was stitching up the cuts that Kiba had caused in the fight, while Jason and Myers were standing watching them all. Mr. Glass, okay, so what happened? Jason B. I'll explain it, he said, finishing eating his sandwich. Well, just when we were ready to receive our guests, something happened that we never saw coming. There were 2 waves of those bastards, he said, while everyone was paying attention anyway. We stopped the first wave with ease, but from there the second wave followed, but this time there were many more. Luckily most of them got through the traps we had left at the entrance of the camp, and those that managed to fly we managed to handle with our weapons and hand-to-hand techniques, he said while John drank some more whiskey while Sona continued stitching his wounds, but for Wick and I ran out of ammunition. That had never happened to me before. John, not me either, ouch, I complained, making Sona jump a little. Sona, I'm so sorry, she apologized. John, it's okay. David, well, now what? Mr. Glass, well, Sarah Fall wasn't the only spy I had in the Alliance, he said, drawing everyone's attention. Come with me, there's something I want to show you. So everyone began to follow the glass man. Curiosity overcame them. What was he wanted to show them? But then they could see how he stood at a large steel door waiting for Mr. Glass to finish entering a code that opened the steel door. Mr. Glass, there is a way we can end this war without the need to take innocent human lives. After saying that, everyone entered, revealing a large laboratory that was very well kept and also had several building plans and reports on the supernatural world. Chapter 9, Factions Attack. John Wick's group could be seen alongside the Citri group in the laboratory, watching as Mastermind was mixing several chemicals as well as also having some blueprints of the place next to them. The Citri group was in doubt about what they were planning to do, but Wick's group already had an idea of what it was, so without further ado they moved around the laboratory, starting to put away everything that could be useful for future events, confusing the Citri even more. Tsubaki, okay, what are you doing now? David, we are preparing. Tsubasa, getting ready for what? Kevin/Dennis, we're getting ready to leave here. Momo, but aren't we safe here? Jason, we'll probably keep moving so those supposedly superior beings can't locate us too easily, he said while carrying some boxes. Sona, but where can we go? Mastermind, well, there is a psychiatric hospital very close to Haddonfield. That's where we're going to stay until I manage to finish what I planned, he said as he began to put the jars into a kind of machine which began to spin several times. But then a great jolt alerted everyone except Mastermind, who only sighed as he continued with his work. Mastermind, until they finally found us, he said while mixing the liquid he was preparing. Ruruko, you say that like if it were something normal, I screamed, scared and angry. Mastermind, relax, I already have a plan, he said, bringing closer the plans he had. These plans showed the construction of the asylum and its underground laboratories. Tsubasa, and that's important. Why? Mastermind, because I have studied these plans very carefully, and I also knew which were the least stable points, he said while using a red marker to mark the different points mentioned above. If we manage to put different charges on these points, we will be able to demolish the entire place with that so-called alliance inside. Sona, it's a good plan, but what will happen to us and the families we are caring for? Mastermind, according to the map, there is a tunnel that leads to a direct passage to the mountains, he said seriously. Harry, okay, here comes the problem. Spit it out now, he said while preparing his beak. Mastermind, the tunnel is blocked by several tons of rock, so we will need time to unblock the tunnel and place the charges in the specified areas, he said before hearing another rumble accompanied by a slight tremor. David, and it seems that the floodgates are not going to hold anymore. Wick, okay, we'll split into 3 teams. Team number 1 made up of Harry, Michael, Jason Voorhees along with some members of Miss Citri's clan will try to remove the rocks to get out of here. Team 2 made up of Elijah, Ruruko and Momo will go to these points to place the homemade explosives that Elijah created. Sona, and the third team? Wick, I'll try to buy time, he said as he pulled out a gun. David/Dennis, okay, I think it's time for the beast to get some exercise, he said as he took off his shirt and then began to moan in pain and his body began to undergo somewhat noticeable changes such as the increase in muscle and the veins that were marked on his body. Beast, Issei growl will be avenged. Elijah, oh my good friend, tell me, he said as he approached the beast, how willing are you to avenge him? He asked, and then received a great roar in response that sounds like those bad boys will suffer greatly. 30 minutes later, all the supernatural families could be seen gathered in the tunnel watching Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Harry Warden, Tsubasa and some of her companions move the rocks with the help of some people who were there. Milikas, I would remove the big stones first and from above or else they will fall on us, he said watching how the big guys and the members of the Citri entourage worked. Come on, put more effort. The three assassins only turned to look threateningly at Milikas, who decided to remain silent and leave, leaving them to work comfortably while the others tried to help. With Wick, he was on sub-level 3 preparing the traps to make his job easier while he was accompanied by Sona, who was sitting at a desk watching as the large steel doors flew open revealing several Alliance soldiers entering sub-level 1. Sona, they have already managed to enter sub-level 1, she said through a communicator. Okay, we are on the stairs of sub-level 2 finishing placing the explosives, he said through the other side. Sona, you better move Momo, since they are trying to enter sub-level 2, she said watching as he began to hit the door loudly. Momo, if we can hear them, we must leave now to continue with the plan, she said, cutting off the communication. Wick and Sona proceeded to go down to sub-level 4 where the others were waiting, ready to buy some time for their companions who were trying to dig as fast as they could in order to save the supernatural families who remained loyal to Issei Hayato.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.